How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. We got a lot to get into here today. Jim Valley is joining us. Jim, what are you wearing today?
No T-shirt, but I do have a sweatshirt.
You're out of T-shirts now? It's sweatshirt time?
I do have T-shirts. It's just kind of foggy and cold here today. This is a sweatshirt that I picked up at a pop-up store at a train station in Tokyo in January, and it's got Dick Beyer on it, the intelligent and sensational destroyer.
Yes.
Wrestled Gorgeous George and Baba and Ricky Dozan, a legend in Japan and in Los Angeles and in Buffalo, New York, just everywhere. When he died not that long ago, it was front page news all over Japan.
That's right. All-time legend in Japan. One of the... Is it still the record for the most watched Japanese professional wrestling match?
I believe it is.
Him and Ricky Dozan?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys wouldn't even believe the number. It was like 50 million people watched that match. Something completely, unbelievably ridiculous. Meanwhile, we got the Wednesday Night Wars, 1.5 million people, 1.6 million people watching. And Raw, 2.2 million. That's what we're talking about here. Ricky Dozan. And that was in the 50s, on an island. Anyway, hey, we got a lot to get into here today. Tons of news. Well, actually, most of the news is the last couple of days, I'm not going to lie. But we have some news for today that I really want to talk about. And we will take your feedback. I'm glad we didn't take feedback yesterday when I had to deal with the hashtag cancel WWE Network all over the internet. It happens all the time, and it never happens. Although I know people are listening right now saying, I have canceled, Bryan. How dare you say nobody cancels? Statistically, nobody cancels. It's just a slow trickle over the years. But we'll talk about that. If you canceled, if you feel like canceling the network because Bill Goldberg beat the Fiend, we will hear from you today. 1-800-878-PLAY, 1-800-878-7529. Text messages, 425-780-7566. You can also email me, Bryan at WrestlingObserver.com, at Bryan Alvarez on Twitter, at Jim Valley, at Sempervive. We got a lot to get into, and we shall kick it off after the break. Wrestling Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, Jim Valley, everybody's here today. We're going to take your feedback. I know a lot of people are in a kerfluffle here. To steal a line from DJ Convoy on the board, a kerfluffle about this Goldberg thing, him beating the Fiend. And I just want to mention that last night, Jim did an Observer Radio with Dave, and you asked Dave the question about ESPN Plus and Goldberg becoming the champion. I don't think Dave fully understood the question. I don't think that let's say that WWE is negotiating with ESPN Plus. I don't think one person at ESPN Plus would ever say, well, we'll consider making this deal for you for WrestleMania, but we need Goldberg in the main event. And not the Fiend. I don't think there's one person in ESPN that would say anything like that. I think this had anything to do with the ESPN side. When I made this prediction weeks ago, I made this prediction because I try to think how I think Vince is going to think. And I want to make it abundantly clear, a lot of these predictions, I'm not saying it's what I do. I'm saying I've watched this guy for a long time. I've watched him completely fall off the wagon in 2018, and I don't even know what he's become in the last couple of years. But I look at things and I think, what might Vince do? And I came to that conclusion that, you know what? If they're negotiating to put WrestleMania on an over-the-top service that's going to charge $65, I'll bet you anything this guy's thinking, I got to put that belt on Goldberg, not the Fiend. That's what I thought he would do. That's what happened. Now, the reason I bring this up also is because I got a text from somebody today, and the WWE has announced tonight on SmackDown, they've given us a preview here. New Universal Champion Goldberg is officially set for Friday's post-Super SmackDown episode of the show. Super Showdown episode. Goldberg's going to be there tonight. And John Cena is going to be there as well. It's in Boston, so John Cena is going to be super over. They're going to set up whatever his match is at WrestleMania, which is expected to be with The Fiend. All right? So, somebody texted me today and they said, I'll bet you anything that Goldberg is booed tonight. And as soon as he said that, I thought, you know what? I don't know why I didn't think about this earlier, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if that's like the idea.
That's exactly it.
If that's Vince's idea where, you know what? We want to get Roman over.
Right.
We don't want Goldberg.
Everybody's too focused on Goldberg.
Yes.
They're not seeing the next step. This is not about Goldberg. This is about Roman Reigns.
Well, it's partly about Goldberg, but if you're going to do this Goldberg-Roman Reigns match at WrestleMania, I mean, he doesn't want Roman booed again. So, like, maybe the whole idea is Goldberg's supposed to be the heel in this match, and that was, like, part of his deal of, we'll kill this Fiend quickly. We'll have Goldberg versus Roman, that's a bigger match, and we'll have Goldberg going in as a heel. Like, again, I'm not saying I do any of this. I'm just saying I look at what this guy does, and I think that might be the whole idea behind this thing.
Literally just, like, 15 minutes ago on Twitter, the WWE Network, and this is not by accident, tweeted out a clip of the match from WrestleMania 20, Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, where they got booed out of the building. These people are not oblivious. This is not a mistake or an accident.
Well, it's not, but it's also the WWE social media department. They do many times go into business for themselves.
Right.
But the one I want to mention, and we'll get Mike's thoughts here, is so earlier today, I guess it was, Macaulay Culkin, of all people, tweeted out, if I can even find it here, basically he said, I'm not going to WrestleMania now.
He canceled his plans.
He's so mad that Goldberg won the title from The Fiend, he's not going to WrestleMania. And Bill Goldberg responded with, and I quote, duly noted, dork.
So funny.
Oh, man, as soon as I saw that, I thought he's going heel.
I'm worried, though.
Turning
I'm worried
heel
that
on
Bill
Macaulay
Goldberg is going to get hit in the head with some paint cans attached to a string.
Your thoughts on this, Mike?
Where to begin, I guess. It's hard for me to believe when you say in one breath that Vince has lost it over the years. Now he's turning around and playing, 4D chess with his booking, and he's an expert again. I just think it's fortuitous timing. Bray Wyatt was going to get booed against Roman Reigns, and Goldberg is now going to get booed against Roman Reigns for different reasons, but it's not because of the great booking. It just comes down to the fact that he wanted a bigger name, and it would make for a bigger match. And he is not incorrect in what he says, and you can debate whether or not you think that they are pulling this trigger too soon on The Fiend, or you don't like them bringing back somebody from the past. But I just think it's fortuitous timing now with Goldberg getting booed, and I cannot give them the credit for... Well, see, we're giving him more credit that I think that they maybe should get for having Goldberg get booed in this exchange. He was going to get booed against Bray Wyatt by some people. Now we have what, frankly, in many ways is an artificial pushback from people now going, well, I'm going to cancel the network. They've killed Bray. I've loved Bray since the start. A lot of that is overblown, and a lot of it is just people doing it because they can do it on social media. So I don't think that they're accomplishing some great thing here. They're just bringing back a name from the past that...
Wait. Hold on. Let me say, I don't think this is a great idea. I'm saying I'm trying to look at this from Vince's perspective based on the things that he has done over the last 5 years for a lot of different reasons. Like the idea that Goldberg, a 50-something-year-old Goldberg squashes The Fiend in... like 3 minutes or whatever it was, 5 minutes. After, look at what The Fiend ran through everybody. Now everybody that The Fiend beat looks like a geek because Goldberg just beat this guy. On a show, by the way, where The Undertaker, without even taking his coat off, squashes AJ Styles. I mean, I'm not saying at all that this is some sort of brilliant idea. I'm saying I think that this is Vince's mindset, and this was the idea that he came up with. If you want to argue that it's a great idea, I will argue with you. I don't think it's a great idea at all, but I think it's a Vince idea. And
it's a Vince idea. I don't know from there how much to extrapolate out of it other than we've talked about it. Edge and Orton was one thing, but now you're bringing back Undertaker specifically because of AJ Styles and shoehorning him into the card. And now with Goldberg coming back, it's okay. It's just a reminder to everybody that you have not created big stars. John Cena coming back the same sort of way, shoehorning him in. Now with Bray Wyatt, I guess you can say that it makes some sense. But it's like, again, you keep going back to the well with this stuff. And, it's definitely a Vince idea. And, it's going to be a bigger match. I don't know from there Okay, now the shoulder shrug because we still need programming to get to it, and you're still going to need programming after WrestleMania, and they never really take that into the account, and that's kind of why they're in the position they're in after all of these years.
Esbernier says, I've heard more support for the Fiend gimmick in the last 24 hours than I have since he debuted. Do you think this sudden uproar is just people jumping on the bandwagon instead of legitimate dislike for Goldberg? Well, listen. There are some fans who are really mad that Goldberg squashed the Fiend, okay? There are some. But the vast majority of this is people jumping on the bandwagon. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, people like to go on Twitter. It's going to make people mad, but this is just a fact.
Wait,
people
what?
love to go on Twitter and say things that are going to get them likes.
Wait, what?
Yes, you hear me?
I'm going to go lay down.
So if there's a hashtag WWE Network deal, they'll retweet it. They'll tweet something that'll get them a like. People aren't that mad. Yes, statistically, no one's canceling. Some people are. I'm sure people canceled yesterday. They sent me their screenshots. But I heard the same thing after the Royal Rumble that Roman Reigns won. It's just going to be a slow trickle. It's been a slow trickle. There haven't been these events where all of a sudden, tens of thousands of people quit on the same day. It just slowly trickles.
And here's the other thing about the stars. We are now in a time, I think we're past the point where you can do a slow and steady rebuild of all the audience that they've lost over the last 20 years. We're in a time now where you have got to cue investors and deal with the stock prices. You've got to do these quick fixes. The time of laying and slow and steady wins the race is over.
Dude,
now you've got to sell. You've got to sell WrestleMania to the over-the-top people and make the money now. There's no patience for that build anymore to recreate and build new stars. We're in a microwave era. We're in a microwave era now, and the time to rebuild. It's over. It's over.
All right. Well, hold on, everybody. Hold on. We're gonna head to a break. We'll come back. We'll get everyone's thoughts on this and your feedback on hashtag Cancel WWE Network. Back in a moment. Observer Live. All right, back here in the show. Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, Jim Valley. Let's go one at a time here. I just want to say, slow and steady can win the race. We've seen that from AEW.
It can.
Hold on. It's not happening with Vince. Vince has no concept of... Well, he may have a concept of slow and steady, but he forgets the next week. So... as long as Vince is around, the problem is he's going to keep hot-shotting like he's doing right now. And as we've seen a million times in history, it only makes things worse.
You're right, but the difference is AEW is a private company and new. WWE is a public company that has to deal with Wall Street and answer to analysts and investors and stakeholders. And that's just the way the world is right now.
Yeah, but they've had to do that since 2001.
And things have escalated.
Well, yeah, but my point is in 2001, they could do slow and steady with certain storylines, and it was fine.
And they should have.
And the problem is I don't think the problem is that they're public right now. The problem is Vince is lost his mind.
Well, that's part of it, but the problem is also this has been 20 years of being told that this era of stars is not as good, that the other era of stars was better. And now that they bring back new nostalgia like Edge, and he has yet to draw ratings, hopefully he will soon because they're doing a great build with him, that nostalgia is gone. Even though that nostalgia is making money with things like Sonic the Hedgehog movie and other things aimed at that generation, this is a problem that has been 20 years in the making, and the business climate where we find ourselves today with Vince in a publicly traded company makes it very unlikely that he's going to have the patience and the discipline to rebuild, because that's going to cost audience as well, and people will not understand that that's what he's trying to do, whether he's successful or not. He's got different pressures and a different reality, and I think you are where you are, and this is the way it is.
Mike.
Well, reality's been there for quite some time, and the reality of that reality is they're making more money hand over fist than they ever have in their entire lives, and the people that are looking at that aspect of their business have absolutely, positively, 100% no idea about what is taking place on the screen, and they don't understand the correlation between the two. That's been obvious from the investors' meetings and the analyst reports and all of that sort of stuff. You could rumor that Donald Trump was going to buy WWE Raw, just Raw, and that sent the stock price into a tizzy, yet they don't look at the fact that they are having the troubles that they have creating new stars and the things that they need to do with their core business that they've lost hold of. And you see how they're actually mutually exclusive, yet have nothing to do with each other at all. And everybody is right in what we are talking about here. But the reality of the situation is nothing is going to change Vince, and nothing is going to change what they do until he is gone and out of the way. And who knows when that is going to be, but we are seeing lions in winter. And to Jim's point about we are in a new era, I know this has nothing to do with it, but I keep thinking about in the back of my mind, Top Rank Boxing and Bob Arum. I keep thinking about Don King and Don King Promotions and Productions and everything those families hold, as well as what WWE has. And I do wonder going forward what the value is going to be on the past and how much that is going to be worth in comparison to what they have right now in their future and in their present, which they have an embarrassment of riches. But what can they do to actually move this whole thing forward, and what can they do in spite of Vince? And it is a circular question that we keep beating our heads over and over again. But the reality is, no matter what we talk about here, once WrestleMania is over, we're going to go back into the same malaise as we always do, because that's what they've done year after year after year, and it's a broken record, and it's an unfortunate one, and I know it always makes for good copy to talk about, but I'm not sure how much can really be accomplished.
No, you see, Mike, it's not the same malaise because we'll go to Extreme Rules, so it'll be the same matches, but people hitting things with weapons.
That's true.
You see the difference?
Yes.
Completely different.
Yes. You know why? Because you can now sell the weapon then as part of the package that you put together in the 2-pack that you're going to sell for the holiday, which, puts you in the back in the corner of having these pay-per-views with themes that, oh yeah, is not good for your core business. And again, that circle has been running, again, over and over again. And I know people, because of Wednesday night and because AEW is something new, I know people want to always play that comparison. One thing about WWE is that you cannot play equal comparisons with any other wrestling company in the world, no matter how much money that other person has. We can only do that and talk about it from the pro wrestling aspect of things. And that's kind of it. And I think sometimes, with things like Saudi Arabia and AEW having their pay-per-view coming up and having better TV than NXT has, and arguably, certainly what WWE has had, we can really only talk about the feels of the pro wrestling and the sports entertainment and the basics. And that's where AEW, as well as New Japan and maybe other promotions too, depending on what you watch, are kicking the crap out of WWE right now. And the bottom line is, that's all and that's it. And so with all of the other flash that we can talk about and things that matter as far as business goes, when it comes to pro wrestling, when it comes to the sports entertainment, quote unquote, the WWE was built on and they've lost their way with, AEW, as well as other promotions, are kicking the crap out of them right now, and they're going into their great season where they're going to make tons of money. But, yes, it's not an equal comparison, but just looking at it from pro wrestling, which is still what I like to do sometimes, I mean, it's more fun to talk about that than trying to deal with how Vince thinks about his business or anything else when it comes to WrestleMania, because what does it matter?
This person here says, Bryan, how can you look forward to Reigns versus Goldberg? Goldberg can barely do his finish and lift Bray. He only has that in the spear. It's time to retire. Well, listen, forget the booking of the match. Like, the actual in-ring itself. Goldberg, here's your options. Goldberg versus Roman Reigns, or, what was it? Roman Reigns versus The Fiend?
In red.
Okay. I realize that, everybody is really mad that Bray lost right now, but, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, and I don't even really blame Bray Wyatt, but with the exception of one Daniel Bryan match, when's the last time we saw a good match with The Fiend? The answer is never, okay? So my point in comparing the two matches is, first off, Bray Wyatt's a very heavy guy, and things happen in matches, and something went wrong with the jackhammer. That doesn't mean it's the end of the world, okay? I'm pretty sure that Goldberg can get Roman Reigns up if they do the jackhammer. If the options are Roman Reigns and Goldberg go 4 minutes, it's an explosive match, and they get out of there. That's option one. Or option two, Roman and Bray Wyatt go 18 minutes with a red light, and they do all of the goofiness that we've seen in every Fiend match, where Roman Reigns just hits him with a million moves, and the Fiend doesn't sell it, and then finally we do a spot at the end. Honest to God, I'd rather see Roman Reigns and Goldberg. That's just me. If you want to see the other one, that's fine. But this idea that we've had like a bunch of great Fiend matches, and now we're not going to get that great Fiend match, I want to know where those great Fiend matches are, because I've been watching all of them, and I haven't seen them.
Or great Fiend promos. He says nothing on Firefly Funhouse. The little puppets say nothing and do nothing. It's got a lot of potential. I like the dynamic and the vectors of The Fiend and Bray Wyatt. I like the idea of the Demented Children show, but they do nothing with it as well. There's a ton of potential, and optically it looks cool and has been cool on a certain shallow level, but if you want to talk about the creativity and you want to talk about the dimension and the depth, it's not really there on any level.
Man, that's been a WWE thing for years. If you think about, and this is going back a long way and it's going to rankle some bad memories, but if you think about the initial vignettes with Muhammad Hassan and Sean Daivari, and you look at it and you look at just the initial ones and you go, that could be, if you put that on HBO and gave it to, who was it, Tom Fontana and the guys who made, Homicide and Oz and all those shows and The Wire, like, imagine what you could do with that. Imagine what you could do with somebody with some creativity there. And I don't ask that out of my pro wrestling. I'm not going to do that. But you look at the start of a lot of characters that WWE has come up with, and then you see how quickly they lose their way. And Bray Wyatt, in some ways, frankly, because of what the character is and their track record recently, he has survived this far better than I think some people are giving him credit for and giving WWE credit for screwing it up. They could have screwed this up far worse, and they still may. I just don't think it's going to happen with a Goldberg loss here, and the reality is Goldberg and Reigns is a bigger match. Bray Wyatt, for where he's at right now, with John Cena where he's at right now, that combination together may be better. I know we've seen it in the past before with the Wyatt family and all that stuff, but still, maybe that's actually the better move right now. Now, where do you go with Bray Wyatt after this? That's the big question, and that's the question you ask a lot about WWE when it comes to these situations. What comes next? It's not that Cedric Alexander got beat. What comes next? It's not that Ali got beat. What comes next? It's not that Ricochet just got buried by Brock Lesnar. What comes next? For all of those men, it has been nothing. We'll see what happens with Bray Wyatt. He's got a better chance, but what creatively can you do? They got to be on their P's and Q's about that, and they have not been.
So I want to mention something also. This person says on Observer Radio this morning, Dave says Brock is not subject to the wellness policy because he's not there all the time. Primo was subjected to the wellness policy. He's out of the country, hasn't been on TV in a year and a half. Well, it's not that they're not there. It's that Primo is signed to a full-time WWE deal, whether they use him or not, and Brock is signed to a special, not there all the time deal. It's the contract. In Brock's contract, he is not subject to the wellness policy. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back on the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, Jim Valley. This person says, didn't Bray have his previous best match with Roman? I think it was Hell in a Cell. Well, they had a Hell in a Cell match in 2015, and that was not The Fiend. That was Bray Wyatt. The Fiend is having a very different kind of match, which literally 9 times out of 10 sucks. Hey, yesterday, people were... I don't know why there was no red light during the Goldberg match. Maybe Goldberg just said, I ain't doing it. But I had people yesterday saying, well, they couldn't have the red light because they were in a stadium. Dude, they had the red light in his entrance. So I know they could have the red light.
They had a huge wave of red fireworks for him. They were pretty cool looking.
Yes, yes. Jaime, you're on the air. What's going on? Enlighten us.
How's it going, guys? Actually, reality, I really liked Goldberg winning the championship. It's like nothing against The Fiend. It's just Goldberg's a bigger deal. And I don't know if it means anything, but, back in Goldberg's day, guys would tell the boss, I don't think this is a good idea. Well, at least The Rock and Stone Cold, they would tell Vince, I don't think this is a good idea. I shouldn't do this or that. And wouldn't you know it, they're bigger stars for it. And to these guys, just do whatever creative tells them. And, things like Seth Rollins crying happens.
Well, I want to thank you very much for the call. There's 2 things here. I mean, the first thing is that, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, dude, they could tell Vince whatever they wanted, because what's he going to do, fire them and they go to WCW? It's not going to happen. Today they're not firing anybody, but now we're at the point where everyone's just afraid to say anything, because he won't fire you. You'll just that'll be the end of you. You won't be on television. You'll sit at home. I mean, you'll make your money, but if you like wrestling, that's it. Everybody is scared. And the ones who aren't scared, I mean this in the nicest way possible. In fact, I hesitate to even bring this up because, maybe he was just saying what he thought he needed to say. But when Cedric Alexander was getting buried on TV every week, and he had to go on Twitter and explain that, dude, I'm in the ring having great matches. I'm not being buried. I'm in the ring having great matches with AJ Styles. What are you talking about? Like, if he actually believed that, then we got a generation here that they don't get it. Like, they've just grown up in this era where they've been taught that, AJ just being in the ring with The Undertaker taking a choke slam. He got the rub.
Hey, that's $1 million choke slam.
I mean, come on.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. He knows it's BS what he's saying, but at the flip side, he's also going, I got pride in myself.
Well, Mike, let me say one thing. You may be right, but then a week ago, he also did that tweet where he just said, frustrated doesn't even begin to explain, or something like that.
Well, now all of that is true. He's trying to put a brave face on it one day, even though he looked at the competitor that he is and the talent that he thinks that he is bubbling underneath, and sometimes that comes out on social media, and all of it's true. And then he backs off of it. And look, I am happy to be making this big money here, and I'm having great matches, and he justifies it that way because he's got pride in his professional work and going out there and doing the job that he's being paid to do. Whether he should be put in a different position or not, it's a different story. But, I just want to Jaime there. Personality and where you are with a certain person goes a long way. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden. I mean, people have been complaining to promoters for years and have been getting the short end of the stick, or a shorter end than they had walking in the door, initially to talk to them. So a lot of it has to do with who you are and what you could do for a person or the relationship you have with somebody. It's not like, again, Cedric can just kick down Vince's door and go, this is what I think it's going to be. And he backs off and goes, all right, Ced, let's go ahead and do this. Nobody's going to do that. Now, if Steve Austin does it, it's a little bit different. But still, I mean, a lot of that is time and space when that stuff happens. And I think much like the old school local promo, like sometimes that gets romanticized a little bit too much with guys standing up to the boss and grabbing the brass ring and all the BS that goes with that.
Nicholas, my man, you're on the air. What's going on?
Hey, Brian, Mike. Listen, love your show. Thank you so much for taking my call. Just a quick question. You guys talked about creative direction, how, right now is the time WWE should start creating new stars. I feel like every time they try to go and, they want to create a new gimmick or, create new talent, create like, some new stars, and I feel like every time they try to change someone's gimmick or go a different direction, they give up on them too soon. And I guess I'm wondering, is it the wrestler that's not really, like going 100% with it?
Hey, let me help you out here, buddy, okay? I'm going to answer this question for you. All right, thank you very much for the call. So I just happen to be watching, I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but I happen to be watching a Retro, Raw, and Nitro from 19 years ago this week, which I review every Tuesday on the Bryan and Vinny Show, okay? And 19 years ago this week, Vince McMahon was doing an angle with Trish Stratus, where he was allegedly having an affair with her. And they were doing all this stuff, and Stephanie's getting angry about it, and a whole 9 yards. Anyway, of course, at the end of the day, it all ends up being a swerve. And Vince ends up turning on Trish Stratus, and he covers her with slop, humiliates her, and of course this leads to the famous angle where she gets on her knees, and she barks like a dog, and it's one of the worst things that WWE ever did. One of the worst things. So anyway, Vince does a promo after he turns on Trish Stratus. And this is what he says. Trish, you're not Daddy's little girl. There's only one of those. Stephanie. I will admit it for the first time. You were Daddy's little toy. And you know what happens to toys, Trish? Eventually, you get tired of playing with them, and playtime is over. I heard that line from Vince, and I was like, my God, that is the last decade, at least the last decade of WWE. Let's take a guy, let's come up with an idea for him, let's throw him out there on TV. Of course, let's handcuff him in every possible conceivable way. Let's have him cut stupid promos and do stupid things and do stupid jobs and everything else. And then, when he isn't over in 3 weeks, I'm sick of this toy, pal! Take this guy off television.
Oh my God. Vince is Sid from Toy Story.
I just want to know how much of the ruthless aggression era of these documentaries he talks about people like Sean O'Hare and Hirohito, Kenzo Suzuki, and all of those other guys that were just like you were talking about, that were brought up, who we could be talking about as retro era stars today, and instead are looked at as, well, WWE failures, a long line of them.
Well, what it is, my friend, my dear caller, is it is Vince's short-term memory, where... I mean, it's short-term and long-term memory. I mean, he doesn't remember nothing from no time. I mean, you know how long... You know what's funny is, like, I wrote about this in my book, by the way, 100 Things WWE fans should know and do before they die. That famous promo where Steve Austin cut a promo on Jake Roberts after winning King of the Ring, and he did the whole line about Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass or whatever. Okay. Dude, it was months after that promo before that guy started to get over. He cut that promo, and he won the King of the Ring, and the next day he showed up, and he was the ringmaster. And there was like one guy in the crowd that had like an Austin 316 sign. Dude, it took a long time for Steve Austin to get over. Even, think about this, he even won the King of the Ring. Nowadays, he would have, like, lost in the first round, and they would have got really mad that he wasn't over, and that would have been the end of that. He won the King of the Ring. He still wasn't over the next day, or the day after that, or the day after that. It wasn't until he started cutting these promos in October to set up a match with Bret Hart in November that he started to catch fire. And that was starting, by the way.
1996... until he was crowned the WWE...
Coronated.
Thank you, coronated.
In 98.
Exactly.
Yes.
98.
Yeah.
It took forever. And the same thing with The Rock. Like, The Rock wasn't over on day one.
No.
It took forever for The Rock. And the funny thing about The Rock, by the way, is everybody remembers Die, Rocky, Die. Well, dude, I rewatched that whole era. Do you know how few people were actually turning on The Rock and chanting Die, Rocky, Die? Compared to, like, Roman Reigns. Like, after the Roman Reigns situation, if you go back and watch the Die, Rocky, Die era, you'd be flabbergasted.
It's cute. It's quaint.
It was like 15% of the crowd maybe turned on this guy. And that was enough for Vince to go, this guy ain't getting over, pal. But you know what he did? Instead of burying the guy or taking him off TV or beating him, he just turned the guy heel and kept pushing him. And again, it took forever for one of the most, I won't even say one of, the most charismatic person in the history of professional wrestling. It took a long time. And now here we are in 2020. Oh, Cedric Alexander isn't over in 3 weeks. I'm done with that guy. Oh, Ricochet can't go over, cut the legs off that guy. He has no patience for anything. That's the problem.
I remember hearing Kurt Angle talk about meeting with Vince McMahon and how they were going to set him up and trying to make him the good guy. And when things started to go south, okay, now you're just going to really play up the three eyes thing and be really annoying, and we're just going to keep going with it until they hate you. And that's exactly what happened. And there could have been a time where it wasn't working as a good guy. They could have killed him dead. It wasn't working as a bad guy, just being annoying now. We're going to kill him dead. They gave him time to marinate. They let him find a way to be Kurt Angle, pro wrestler. And they went with it, and look what we got out of it. We got a guy who became a Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Famer in a shorter period of time than I believe anybody else. It's just an absolute phenomenon that to this day is incredible to think about what Kurt Angle's actually been able to accomplish in the condition he's been in. And that whole thing could have been just like that, disappear, gone. And today probably would have been.
All right, this person here says, what's the point of Goldberg turning heel besides the business going up? What? Well, the point of Goldberg turning heel is so that Roman Reigns will be cheered. That's the point. I mean, would I turn Bill Goldberg in his 50s heel? Are you kidding me?
Goldberg doesn't want to do that.
Hell no.
Goldberg wants to be the hero for his son and for other kids. Goldberg has got, criticize Goldberg all you want, but he's got a value system where he doesn't want to be the bad guy. He sees wrestling and doesn't see a lot of positive role models in his eyes, and that's part of the reason he's doing it. Maybe the millions of dollars also has an effect, and his son watching him wrestle, but he wants to be the hero. Goldberg, I don't know if you could talk him into anything else. Maybe you can, but I don't know.
That's why I think it's just fortuitous that people are now going to boo Bill Goldberg, and some of it, again, is artificial because of now this pushback with Bray Wyatt. But the reality is things are going to go for Roman Reigns with Goldberg in that ring exactly how they're going to go, and I don't think you could manipulate that any better than what you could do with him and with Bray Wyatt.
So this person has an interesting comment here. He says, I feel like WWE's booking really started to take a nosedive, and Vince has appeared to age a decade since he took the insane headbutt from Kevin Owens. Well, I wouldn't say that Vince has aged a decade since then, because they had some footage on some show of him in 2009. It might have been sometime this week, but he looked old in 2009. So he's just an old guy. But it's funny you mentioned that. The worst I've ever seen out of WWE was October 2018, October 2019. And he did take that headbutt in January of 2018. But it wasn't until 8 months later that everything fell off 10 months later. Mm. So I don't think it was the headbutt. Plus, the headbutt wasn't that hard. But yeah, this guy shouldn't be taking headbutts. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, Jim Valley. Obviously, we're here on this show every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. Sundays, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. Valley's on 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 Eastern on Saturdays. But as a subscriber to WrestlingObserver.com, you get so much more. 18 to 20 brand new podcasts a week, many of them exclusive to the website, including the Observer Radio Valley did last night, and another show.
The Portland WrestleCast.
Yes.
All on Don Owens and NWA Pacific Northwest Territory. One of the biggest heels of the 1980s, Rip Oliver. His family has just moved him into hospice in Florida. He's still with us, thankfully. But we had already scheduled to do a show about Rip with a friend of mine, historian Rich Patterson. So we do about an hour all about Rip's career and his big feuds and memorable moments and his significance to the Pacific Northwest. So if you only know Rip from his WWF run, give it a listen. Or if you remember Rip from back in the day, it's a great walk down memory lane, and it's free. It's actually a free show. You don't need to be a subscriber, but you can find it at WrestlingObserver.com.
So yeah, we apparently had some issues on the website today, but we're working to get them fixed. So if you've had any problems, yes, we are aware. Yes, we are trying to get it fixed as quickly as possible. And that's it for today. We are totally out of time. So again, WrestlingObserver.com. Got the Adam and Mike Big Audio Nightmare, Figure 4 Dailies with Filthy Tom Lawler, Portland WrestleCast, Observer Radios. Carl Stern does, I think, 10,000 shows on a weekly basis. There's a lot of great stuff up there, so check it out. And that is it, everybody. I want to thank Jim, Mike, callers and listeners, everybody in the studio. We'll talk to you again next time. Wrestling Observer Live.